eating healthy is so important, and it really makes a big difference in your life. We're making 2 amazing recipes today, by the way. Everybody was excited about gluten-free, right? I know one person right in front of me that was so ready for this class. And so I'm excited myself because I'm going to learn as we go as well. So today we have 2 really good recipes. They're from the book Cooking in Season, which we have available in the kitchen. And it is an amazing book because it goes by seasons. So it gives you like produce are in season, and it helps you better understand on what's in season and then cook with those because they're best anyways. So we have butternut squash apple soup today. And we have a second recipe, which is salsa fresca salmon. And salsa fresca means just fresh, right? Salsa, fresh, with fresh ingredients. So I think I'm really excited about this one. As a matter of fact, I tried it this morning when I was making it. I was like, how can something so simple be so amazing? And it looks beautiful as well. So I'm Chef Zoe Mueller, and we have our dietitian here, Louis. So today we're going to conduct this class. It's gluten-free, and if you have any questions, we have our professional dietitian here, and then you're going to see all the stuff, tips and stuff like that I'm going to give you as far as cooking. So let's go ahead and get familiar with the ingredients first, right? Ingredients for the butternut squash apple soup, which this is the one we're going to start with. Everybody has recipes, right? We have 1 medium yellow onion chopped, rib of celery as well, 1 carrot, 2 tablespoons of butter. When I saw the butter, I was thinking right away coconut oil, because coconut, I've made this before, butternut squash with coconut oil in the oven. It is outstanding. It is amazing. So 1 butternut squash, and also we do an apple. So we're going to do 3 cups of butternut squash and then 1 apple. So that's going to be the ratio for this recipe. 3 cups of chicken broth or vegetable broth. And for this one, since it's a gluten-free recipe, we have to keep it a gluten-free chicken stock and chicken broth or vegetable. There are these products at the store, any supermarket now available. But if you want it gluten-free and you want to make it, that's totally fine, and that's even better if you make it at home. And then 1 cup of water. And we have to have this amazing fall spices that are going to bring up the flavor of the butternut squash, which is nutmeg, cinnamon, and cayenne. It's going to be an amazing soup for fall. It is gluten-free, but also it's perfect for this type of weather. Well, not for the 90s, but it's going to start getting kind of cold, right? So as you can see, the ingredients are so simple. And I always say butternut squash to me is like the queen of the fall, because it is amazing. The benefits are amazing as well. And it's just like, you can put it in roasted, you can put it in the oven, you can make it as soups, you can just eat it with pecans on top and some really good fall spices, and it is wonderful. That's why I call it the queen. And I think it's a pretty good name for the butternut squash anyways. Just the name sounds like a queen, right? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with this one, and then we're gonna do the next one, which is salsa fresca salmon. And it just became one of my favorite recipes, to be honest with you. This soup is amazing as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a pan over here, nice and hot. So keep in mind, since we're making this recipe, you do not want to brown the veggies way too much, because the soup is going to become really brown. So we want to keep it nice and vibrant with like the butternut squash, kind of like orange color. So that's what we want to do. We want to go ahead and saute slightly the veggies, just to caramelize them a little bit, but not to become really brown. So we have 2 tablespoons of butter here that we're going to add here. And I have my sous chef over here. I know she's going to help me in a minute. We need to get her one of those tall chef hats, like mine. Okay, here we go. Let me put it up a little bit. And so as you can see, the ingredients are really simple, right? And I wanted to do all this for all of you, because the spices kind of like get you in a mood to cook. And so I don't know if y'all can smell the spices that I put over here. And it's nutmeg, cayenne pepper. It's basically the spices that we're utilizing for both recipes. And the butter is looking good, right? Okay, so when I have onions, carrots, and celery. I like putting everything on a plate and I just toss it because everything is going to cook at the same time. So this looks really nice. We add in carrots, celery, and onions. So we're going to go ahead and saute that just really like a very low heat. Let me do this. It smells good. So let's go to the queen and the main ingredient of the recipe, which is butternut squash, right? And the way I cut my butternut squash is so easy. I try to get the smallest ones if possible because it gives me more room to cut them and don't get cut, right? So you need a really sharp knife for this, right? So you cut one end and then cut the other end. And my mom thinks I'm crazy because sometimes I do this and I bite into it. I just want to taste how sweet it is. And if it's in season, like right now, it is so good. It's so sweet and wonderful. So I end up eating almost all this. I don't know if you can eat it raw. Is that wrong? I don't think it's going to make me sick, right? Because I do this all the time. Yeah, I'm not crazy. I think so. For peeling the butternut squash, if it's this size, I usually like cutting it in half first. Let me tell you why. Because I have the peeler here, but it is so hard that if you're not careful, you can cut your fingers. So if I do this, I have a hard time doing that. So I just cut it in half, and I have a bowl here so I can start putting all my leftover stuff. And what I do with the knife, with the chef knife, I just go down like that. And if I think this knife is too big for that, then I change it to a smaller one. Okay, so I just grab it and I peel it this way. Versus if it was long, it was going to take too much and I was going to put too much pressure on my fingers and I don't want to get cut. So I just put this over here. I always have a bowl next to me because that way I don't make a big mess. And it helps me to keep my cutting board clean instead of just leaving all the stuff here, right? Talking about mess, let me move my spices over here. My sous chef is really smelling good over there. What are you making?
Oh, just some carrots and onions.
It is crazy how 3 ingredients can make something smell so wonderful already. So when I was making the soup, I was thinking right away, garlic will be a good option, right? I think I will put 1 garlic and just let it saute with everything because everything is going to go into the blender or food processor. And, okay, so we got it all nice and skin is totally off this beautiful queen butternut squash. So we do the same thing with the other. And just butternut squash, I think when you roast it, you get this really amazing sweet flavor, right? It's just like overcome something more like candy than anything. So I think it's a good option for snacking, right?
It's a really good way to get all your vitamin A in it, you know, all the veggies and everything that have a orange or reddish tint to it. It's a good source of that. And it's also got a good amount of vitamin C in it. So eating your colors, this is one of the colors.
It is, right? I already feel kind of yellow and for whatever reason, orange. I like it. So at this point, since over here is where you find the seeds, I know that this is going to be like nice and it's not going to have any seeds inside. So I cut it this way because I want to cut it into small dices. That way they can cook fast enough, right? Cut it like this. Put it over here and then work on this part right here. A lot of people get discouraged with butternut squash because the cutting is the part that you find really difficult. But it's just like focus and just think, this is therapy for me. I'm going to cut a butternut squash. It's going to be okay. As long as you have the right knife, it's going to be fine, right? Okay, so we dice it just like this. So maybe you want to have your mom or a friend next to you. That way you can talk to and you don't get bored, right, while you do this. You talk about what you're going to do. So I want to put it aside because I want to put everything at the same time, right? I don't want to put this part and then it's going to cook sooner than the other pieces. So cutting this. A good knife will be a good option for this. Absolutely. You can smell the butternut squash already. It's just so, smells so wonderful.
Do you have any tips when you're at the store, when you're picking one out? Any
Absolutely.
words of wisdom?
Yeah, what I do when I pick butternut squash, I make sure that both ends are really firm, right? And it's just, butternut squash itself is going to be really hard and really firm at touch. So just make sure that it's nice and silky, just like this, and it doesn't have a lot of
Bumps.
exactly. So you never go wrong with butternut squash. Okay, so I'm sorry. When I make like soups, because I'm gonna dice a lot, I try to pick the smallest ones just because it's gonna help me, you know, throughout the chopping and dicing and stuff like that. When you have a big one, you kind of like get frustrated because you have to cut it like in 3 big pieces. So I think this is the best choice whenever you're making soups. Now, if you're gonna just put it in the oven, you cut it in half, I think it's okay to get the big butternut squash because you're just gonna put it in the oven, right? Okay, so it's smelling wonderful. So let's go ahead and put our butternut squash. Oh, it looks so good now. Love butternut squash. Last year I made butternut squash and it became my mom's favorite soup. I made it with chipotle. And she don't eat spicy stuff, but I didn't tell her because she's going to have a fit. She's going to get mad. And so I was like, I'm just adding a little bit of chipotle. It was so amazing. And then I put Greek yogurt on top, Greek yogurt cilantro. I just put it in the blender and I added on top. It was just outstanding. So it's just another idea of butternut squash. We're going to put this aside. I think that's going to be plenty.
Okay.
And let's see what's next on the soup. We have butternut squash. I know the recipe doesn't call for this, but I was thinking, when I was making the soup, I was thinking that thyme will be a good option. So if you want to do this, you can put just 2 little stems like this and just let it cook, right? And then, of course, we have the apple. For the apple, I want to just cut the ends of the apple. And then, of course, I want to get the skin off as well. And I just do it like this. And for the apples, you can do the green apple. I was even thinking the red one will be good as well. The red one will be a little sweeter. This one is more tart to flavor, so it's going to give the butternut squash a really good balance of flavor. Okay, so we move this over here. And this is the most simple way of just dicing your apple. If you don't have one of those things to extract the seeds, just cut it in quarters, add them in there. So it's simple so far. It's really simple, right? Now, let me give you a tip that a lot of chefs do. Whenever you want your spices to get really concentrated and more intense in flavor, then what you would do, you would add whatever spices are on the recipe directly to whatever is sauteing, because you're going to get a really nice, strong flavor. Or you can just add it to the soup whenever you're bringing it back to the soup, to the pot. I would not do this at this for this recipe just because we don't want to overwhelm our main ingredient, which is the butternut squash. We want to keep it really nice and have some notes in there of the flavors of the cayenne pepper and the nutmeg and the cinnamon, but I don't want to overwhelm our main ingredient, which is the butternut squash. So that at that point, what we're going to do, we're going to add our chicken stock, which is gluten-free. See, I didn't even know that chicken stock or chicken veggie broth or veggie broth or chicken broth, I didn't know that it was, a lot of them have gluten, right?
Well, you just always want to double check the label for anything that comes in cans or boxes. Things are processed too, just to make sure if you really need to be following a strict gluten-free diet. Because for those who are actually truly sensitive to it, it can, cause a lot of side effects for their stomach and things like that. So like Chef Zoe was saying, if you're you know, wanting to stick to fresh type foods, you can always make your own chicken broth too.
Absolutely.
So,
And making it is so easy. It's just basically the bones of the chicken with a lot of veggies, whatever spices you want, or fresh herbs, which you can pick like thyme or even rosemary and all that stuff, and it just make bay leaves will be a good option as well. So you can even make it at home. And so the stock just becomes a little thicker than the broth. So if you want the broth, then that's when you add salt and stuff like that. Stock is more like no flavor whatsoever. It's thicker in texture. But broth, if you want to keep it as broth instead of stock, then you add a lot of like good herbs and a little bit of salt. Unlike the stock, you keep it at no flavor. It's kind of like really strong. It's thicker. I like broth for my soups. So this will be a good option. And if we made it here in the kitchen, so I know that this is gluten-free. So make sure that you're keeping it gluten-free, to make sure to read the labels, because I didn't even know myself. And I was like, I didn't know that there was gluten in the chicken stock or vegetable stock. So now I know.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, it's kind of like, well, I only need a smaller amount of chicken stock too. You can always freeze it, put it in the freezer in little baggies, and just whenever you want, even one serving or two servings for, you know, 2 people at home, you can always unfreeze it, defrost, and then.
And it is just the healthiest way of putting something into your soups, because soup's supposed to be something healthy for you, right? Something that makes you feel good, and you don't want to add all this additives and all that stuff that is in some of the cans, like a lot of sodium. So for that, I would recommend that we turn this down because it's burning. We want smoke anyways, right? Let's put it over here. So what we would do with this, we will let it we're going to bring it to a boil, and then we're going to cover it, and we're going to let it simmer until all the veggies are really nice and tender. That is the process of this, because at that point, whenever they're nice and tender, we're going to transfer them to a nice food processor, or if you have like a emergent blender, I think that will be a good option as well. But I like having this type of blenders because they work so well for soups. So this is what you end up with, right? So, and it smells wonderful. So I just put all this stuff in here, and then this right here, I'm going to transfer it to a nice pot that is in the on the stove already. And I think the texture, you can just, if you really want to have a thicker texture, then just totally after you add maybe less of the chicken stock, and then don't add the water that calls in the recipe, because water is another ingredient that we were supposed to add in here. Maybe you want it thicker. I like my soups really nice and thick, especially if they're creamy like this. I don't like them too runny. So I will keep the amount of the stock, maybe half of the amount instead. So it smells wonderful. I don't even want to turn this off. So at this point, that's when you start adding your spices. And I have my little container here. So I know that I don't want this soup spicy. And I don't want to overwhelm my soup with all these flavors and all the spices. I just want a pinch of each, just so that the butternut squash can come out to life and be even more amazing. So I add a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of cayenne pepper, and some nutmeg. And then I just let it simmer for a little bit, cover it, and let it be, and all the spices are going to get in there, and it's going to taste amazing. So at that point, I think my soup is ready. I have a bowl over here. Ooh, this is really working really hard. Okay, so this soup looks amazing. Who's not going to want this soup right now? I know I do. And it's perfect for fall, and just whenever you're not feeling well, allergies are really bad, I think this is a great option, because the benefits of the butternut squash are really good, right? I guess that's why I call it the queen of the squash, or the fall. Okay, so let's do this. Perfect. So we put this here, and then I'm going to have you turn this on in a very fake way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little more on top like this. And I don't know, but I I've always been the type of person that I like to add something on top, just so people would know, other than butternut squash, what else did you add it on here. So maybe I'm gonna add, just gonna cut this, I'm gonna put it right in the middle. And I have an apple here. So what I'm gonna do with the apple, presentation is everything. Do you agree with me? I think so. This is what I would do. Even when I serve myself just a bowl of soup, I fix it so pretty, and my mom is like, really? You take it on? I'm like, Mom, it's for me. I have to make me feel better with this. Yeah. She's waiting, and then she's like, are you ready? And I'm like, hold on, let me just do this really quick. Please, Mom, just bear there with me for a second. So I'm just gonna julienne some apples. And you can either julienne them or you can just dice them, but I think juliennes look so pretty. And you can just add some on top, just like that. And so yesterday I roasted a pumpkin. And I always roast my seeds because they're so good, right? And you just add some cinnamon and nutmeg on top. And so you can add some on top as well. I think it looks really nice, right? So I just had them here, just ready for this dish to make it look really beautiful. And since that so that's our butternut squash apple soup. Gluten-free, amazing, right? At least I know. At least I think so. So what do you think about this recipe? Yes? You know what? I didn't add any salt because I wanted all the, I really never add salt, even though the recipe calls for salt. It is totally up to you, and whenever you bring everything to the soup back to the pot, at that point you might add a little bit, just a pinch of salt, to get it really nice and flavorful. But salt, I don't think is needed because I didn't add anything to the one that you're about to try. So you let me know what you think. I really wanted the flavors of the butternut squash to be the main, like I said, is the queen of the fall. So I wanted to keep it really nice and refreshing. So what do you think about this recipe? Isn't it amazing? And the presentation, I think it's just really welcoming for you to eat it. And of course, you're going to taste it in a minute. But we can move on to the second recipe because I think our second recipe, it is also amazing. And it is salmon salsa fresca, just means fresh sauce. So meaning I'm not going to worry about cooking my tomatoes, my peppers. Everything is going to go straight to the blender, and it's just going to roast with the salmon. So I'm going to have a blender here that I'm going to clean. And I'll let our dietitian, if you have any questions, please.
And so this is a really good way to really incorporate. I know in the Texas fall, it's not really a true fall until a little bit, a month or two afterwards too. But this is another way to really incorporate, you hear a lot of people saying, incorporate your vegetables and things like that too, getting good amounts of fiber as well, but not really overwhelming, by having 10 ingredients, but then having 10 entrees here. You can always put it in one, delicious bowl, and then go from there.
I just love it. I think it's a great option for fall. And now for soups, you roast it, you eat it for snacks with some pecans on top, some maple syrup. Of course, it needs to be raw and organic. For the second recipe, as you can see, this book is amazing. It has amazing recipes, and they're seasonal recipes as well. So if you have any questions, you can come up to the class. But you should have all the instructions here on the recipe that you have in front of you. But it's a simple recipe. Yeah, I know you don't have a lot of questions because it was really simple. It's like one of the basic recipes for fall, right? Mm-hmm. And it's good because it's gluten-free as well. So for the second recipe, we have fresh salsa, which we're gonna use tomatoes. We're gonna use onions. We're gonna use garlic and peppers. So those are the main ingredients for salsa fresca. Of course, salsa fresca usually have cilantro, but it's totally up to you. And we're gonna utilize it at the end just so we can have something refreshing, right? I think it'll be a good option. So in the blender, it's gonna go, we're gonna add some tomatoes. It says plum tomatoes. I think that whenever you have any type of tomato available at home, that's the really good way of going. You don't have to just, my mom sometimes gets like that, but it says that you're supposed to use certain tomatoes. I'm like, Mom, they're tomatoes. We're just gonna use tomatoes for this recipe. We don't wanna make it really complicated in the kitchen. So you cut it in half, put them in the blender. Okay, so 1, 2. I know it says 2, but the plum, they're a little bigger, right? So I'm using 3 Roma tomatoes. They're going there. Okay, so I have my trash here. I have 1 garlic, and I'm just gonna, I don't know if you can see it well with those. I like doing this before I add it to my, to the blender. That way they can really blend well, right? And, of course, jalapenos. Now, if you're like my mom that doesn't like spicy stuff, definitely just don't use jalapeno at all if really it's not necessary. Or make sure that you take all the spiciness away, which is all the seeds and the veins inside, right? So the way I like doing it, so I wouldn't have to get a spoon or anything like that, I just try to cut it this way. And at this point, I just grab my knife and cut this right here. And it is so much better, right? If you want to use gloves, that's perfect because your hands and fingers are going to be burning up. Okay, so we add this. And as you can see, I got some really clean jalapenos, right? So whenever you're going to chop jalapenos or dice, and make sure that you get the big ones, right? Because it gives you more room to cut them. If you get the smallest, it's just going to be really hard to get the seeds out. So garlic, onions, tomatoes go in here. What else goes in there? Apple cider vinegar. If you don't have apple cider vinegar, what other choice do you think it'll be okay to use? If I'm going to keep it fresh, I'll definitely do lemon juice or lime juice, right? We just need something acid to go in there. And I think if you don't have apple cider vinegar or regular vinegar, definitely something fresh, such as lemon juice or just juice of the lemon or lime juice will be perfect. So cumin goes in there as well, right? Chili powder. And there's another ingredient that I didn't want to utilize for the recipe, but it's optional, and it is the hot sauce, which is in this case, we're doing, I cannot say names, but it's just a regular hot sauce in the bottle, right? Sometimes they have a lot of sodium, right? But you're not using a lot. It's just, it's optional. It's
for that kick, I guess.
Yes, for that kick. So let me move this over here. Yeah. The sense of smell when you're a chef I'm telling you, I'm glad I have that, because if not, my house will be burned since, everything will be burned by now, because sometimes my mom doesn't smell certain things, and I'm like, do you have something on the stove? And she's like, I left it on 30 minutes ago. I'm like, are those your tortillas? Because she's always burning their tortillas. Okay, so I just want to let you know that the sauce, it is totally optional. No need to add it, because I'm a firm believer that if you're making something fresh, and it's salsa fresca, which is fresh salsa, keep it all the way fresh ingredients. So for this recipe, we're going to go ahead and blend our ingredients. Smells like something was cooking.
No, that's partly why I'm standing here.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready for the noise? Yes. And I know that this thing, when you don't close it, which is really good, when it's not closed all the way, it tells you it will not work, just because it's so powerful and you can get hurt. So I always try to put a napkin here. And let me tell you, this sauce, when I made it, I couldn't believe how delicious it was. It was outstanding. Simple ingredients. You can either eat it with chips, gluten-free chips. Of course, this gluten-free class. The smell is just so wonderful. I wish I could just do this so I can smell it. And it's really good. So I have it here already. And I'm going to add a little more, just a little more. Let me put this over here. It's dangerous. Can y'all smell it? It's just funny how certain ingredients, when they become one and you marry all those ingredients, it's just so amazing. And like flavors, they can be outstanding, right? So I think the cumin, chili powder, and all those spices are wonderful for salsas or sauce. Okay, so this is ready, and I'm going to move all my stuff over here because we want to work on the fish, right? So salmon. Every time you cook salmon, I always get the same question. What is the temperature you need to cook the fish? Internal temperature. That's why we have the thermometers, right? Because this is going to help us identify if it's a good temperature to eat it. We don't want to eat it too raw. So we want to reduce any bacteria that might have to its, what do you call it? So we can eat it, right? So we can eat it. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. I'm going to move all my stuff. Put this down here. I like space when I work in the kitchen. I don't like to have everything crowded. So I know you all are like that, right? It's a good thing because in my house, my mom has her little spot and I have mine. And I'm like, just keep it over there. Let me keep it over here, Mom. So I have some fish here, which is the salmon that we're making. And for this salmon, I'm going to go ahead and it's a big piece, right? So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to put this over here. Let me move this out of the way. So salmon is good for us, right? Omegas.
Omega-3s, it's a really good source of protein as well. So, yeah, it's a good basic ingredient or basic protein that you can find in, mostly all grocery stores.
And it is just wonderful. I was telling one of my friends that I like making salmon soup. I make my broth with a lot of, let's say this will be perfect for that example. I will just get a piece of fish, put it here, cover it, and let it simmer with the veggies. And you get the best of the fish because you're not cooking it somewhere else. You're not losing any of the benefits. All the good fats that are in the salmon are going to go into your soup, so you're going to enjoy both. And it is wonderful. And I was telling you how important it is to cook our fish at a really good temperature, not just for texture, but also to be safe. So 145, if you want to write it down, always keep a thermometer at home. 145 internal temperature, and this is when you check the temperature of the fish that has been in the oven, 15 seconds. If in 15 seconds you didn't get the temperature of 145, that means it's not ready. Also, a lot of the chefs and restaurants, they want to keep it at a really nice texture or to be really juicy. So therefore, they cook their fish at 125 or 130 because keeping in mind when you take it out of the oven, it's still cooking, right? So it's going to get to a good 145. So it is totally up to you. But to be safe, always at 145 internal temperature. So I cut my fish like this, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to transfer it to this sheet pan. I'm going to put it like this. And clean my cutting board. So I know that I'm not cutting any veggies here anymore, so that's why I'm just cutting the fish. Otherwise, I would have to change the cutting boards, right? Because we had some raw fish in here. Okay, so put it back in here. And I have my sauce, Salsa Fresca, or fresh sauce. And I'm just going to simply add my sauce on top. Let me tell you, if you end up with a lot of sauce like this, if you don't want to have contact with the spoon because maybe you want to save it for something else, keep in mind that raw fish can go in here. So maybe you want to do this instead in a small container. Do it by batches like this. And then just put it here. That way this doesn't touch the fish at all. So this goes on top like this. And we're going to put it in the oven at 400 for 15 minutes. Always keeping in mind that every oven is totally different from industrial ones, and just keep an eye on it, but it should take you no more than 15 minutes to cook your fish. Okay, so. Okay, so another thing that you can do, and this is just little tips as we go. We can always learn something else other than just going by the recipe exactly the way it is. Maybe we can add some fresh herbs, right? I would like to put rosemary. Will give it a really amazing flavor as well. So rosemary, thyme will be a good option, right? And so this is going to go into the oven at 415 minutes. How simple is this? I can't even believe how simple it is. And you can eat healthy and amazing. Okay, so as I come here and I grab this, it's ready, right? That was quick. I can't even believe it. I have one of those ovens. They're just like ready for me, yeah. So I have the fish ready here, and of course, presentation is always like one of my main concerns when I cook, of course, healthy stuff. So I have my fish ready to go into the plate. And remember, I don't know who was here last class, but remember when I told you that if you add spinach on the bottom, it really gives your plate like more body and personality, and you're eating more greens, and you end up eating something delicious. And so, of course, all this fish is not just for me. It's too much. Even though it's healthy, I cannot eat the whole thing, right? Because it's got too much fat for one person,
well,
right?
I think, yeah, this recipe calls enough for sharing.
Okay, good. So maybe a 4-ounce salmon will be perfect for individual, right? So I have my fish here, and love to add cilantro. Another thing that you can do, because I know it can get a little dry, because salmon itself, it can get a little dry. You can absolutely do a combination of Greek yogurt, gluten-free Greek yogurt, with the sauce that you made previously, put it in the blender, and then drizzle it on top or put it on the bottom to make it more like creamier. So that will be a good option. And for this as well, definitely you want to do apple, just because. I was going to say mango will be beautiful. What else do you think that will go really well with this? I know this doesn't go with this recipe, but I always said, I don't know if any of you were here when I was talking about when I make soups, I add fruits sometimes, like pears. Pear will be good with this soup, I think. And it's just a way of eating something healthier and adding my fruits that I don't get to eat during the day. So I add some apple to this. And of course, another fruit that I think it'll be amazing will be pineapples, right? That's gluten-free, right? Good. I don't want to, and you just kind of like play with the fruit like that, put it on top. This is something, I always like giving you something optional and some little tips that you can also utilize at home that is not listed on the recipe. So there goes your salmon. And even if I wanted to add some more personality, I think, to the recipe, I would definitely chop some red sweet peppers. The sweet peppers are in the store, the yellow, orange, red. I think that would look really amazing. Or even you can roast the whole pepper inside with your fish and then use it as a nice sauce or just to put them next to your fish. I think that'll be a great option as well.